There you go. There you go.
It's always the same people.
Looking back.
It's because there's cookies. You what? You need my voice?
Evidently, my dulcet tones just not enough to go out over the roof. Anyway, welcome to our May meeting. For those of you who don't know, this is the LNLA. We have lots of announcements. Feel free to read them. I'm not going to read this because I'll end up stumbling anyway. The important thing is Saturday is Neighbor to Neighbor. We meet here at the church at 8:15 for breakfast, and then go out from 9 to noon to our care receivers to work on little projects for them. And the other thing that I was asked to beg for is we're doing a neighborhood cleanup that will also be held here at the church property Saturday, May 28th. And we need volunteers, lots of volunteers both for directing traffic, getting garbage into the dumpsters, and we need people with pickups who are willing to go out and pick up the homes of those that don't have a way to get their stuff to us. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jake Dornblaser, he takes a bullet for Dan Ryan. He's the community engagement coordinator for Dan Ryan's office, here to talk to us about Safe Rest Villages. And I'll step away and let you take over.
Cool, thank you so much. Also, I mean, you're way ahead of schedule. I was like sitting here preparing to I got 4 minutes left. Hi everybody, my name is Jake Dornblaser. I'm a community engagement coordinator with the Safe Rest Village project led by Commissioner Dan Ryan. I'm going to be really honest, this is my first time doing an in-person meeting. So I'm probably going to say a lot, and I'm really sorry about that. Also, so a little bit about me. I actually am a Portland native. Well, I was born in Oregon City. I lived in Lents throughout high school and then into my early 20s. And then I was in the military. I was in the Air Force for 13 years, and I became a social worker. So I know a little bit about social work and working with houseless folks. And that's kind of what brought me into the Safe Rest Village project. So this is my first time doing work that is engaging with unhoused community members. I'm used to engaging with engaging with housed community. I'm assuming you're all housed, sorry. Engaging with housed community members. I usually engage with non-housed community members. And I have a presentation that I usually give, so I'm going to try to do it verbally this time. We're going to see how that works. And it's just going to be a really basic overview of the Safe Rest Village project. So the first thing, I'll cover a little bit about the background. I'm sure you've all seen houselessness, but kind of where we're at, and then I'll go into what Safe Rest Villages are, and then I'll talk a little bit about the Southeast Reedway site, which is also next to Baker's Tick. So the first thing is so I don't know if you all know this, but a new point in time count was just done in the last January 24th of this year. The data was released, I think, last week on Wednesday. I might be wrong though, my weeks are blending together, so it might have been the week before that. That point in time count showed that there were 5,228 unhoused individuals in the Portland area. Of those people, a little over 3,000 of them were what's classified as unsheltered, right? So we have homeless, and then we have unsheltered. And unsheltered meant a place not for habitation, and that includes living in your car, and that includes living in an RV on the street, and living in tents on the streets. So that number went from, in 2019, when the last point in time count happened, that was around 2,000 people, and it went up to 3,000 people. I'm sure you all know this. I'm sure you've all seen it. There are a lot more people living on our streets than were living on our streets before the pandemic, and it's definitely got worse over the years, right? I think we can all agree on that. Hopefully that's not a thing we're going to debate about or else we're starting from a different place. So what the Safe Rest Village project's intent was is to create a new point of, or an improved point of entry, right, to help people access housing. So as a social worker, I can say that it is really hard to provide resources to somebody sleeping in a tent, right? When I'm trying to help somebody navigate to housing, or get an ID card, or get their social security card, right, so they can get maybe a job or access other important resources or SNAP or food resources, whatever. It is really hard when they're in a tent and you can't contact them all the time and you don't know where they're going to be, they don't have a mailing address and things like that. So the idea is you create these spaces for them where they can be at, and you can have continued resources coming to them and provided to them to help them reach stable, sustainable housing. Whatever that looks like for them, right? Some people, that's going to look like supportive housing. Some people are ready for housing and will move into housing. And then some people might go into like rehabilitation or a medical facility or something like that. And my phone keeps shutting off, so that's great. And the idea is understanding that people are in different places, right? Some people need just a place to sleep, and they can get up, they don't need the other resources so much, and just can they have a job already, they're just having a hard time. It's hard to have a job and have all this stuff that you don't know what's going to happen to it while you're at work because you don't have a safe place to put it, right? So they might just need this safe place to keep their stuff throughout the day. They get a job, they have a job, and they move to housing. And then some people need more stuff, right? They might need behavioral or addiction support, right? They might need might need help accessing really basic things that maybe we all have, like licenses, right? And yeah, so there's just a lot of different points that somebody can be at. They might need job training, right? Because maybe they haven't worked in years and it's really hard to re-enter the workforce if you haven't worked in a long time. And so, Safe Rest Villages. What are Safe Rest Villages? Safe Rest Villages are spaces. There's 6 selected sites throughout Portland. I'll list where they are in just a second. But conceptually, they're like, if you take this room and you made the chairs little tiny homes, right? Those would be there, and then there'd be like a group gathering space. There'd be a kitchenette, flushing toilets with showers and laundry facilities, right? And then some offices for like case management and meeting with people and helping them access resources. And then some like amenities that will look different depending on the Safe Rest Village. Some of them might have a garden or a space for dogs or something like that. And that really just depends on the community around it and what's the community that's in it and service provider and things like that. And so along with all that stuff comes our service priorities, right? So typically, and I don't want to be mean to any of the other systems that exist throughout Portland for sheltering unhoused folks. A shelter is a place that somebody comes maybe for the night, sleeps in a bed, and then leaves in the morning, right? These are 24-hour shelters. They are, each person gets their own pod. These are staffed 24/7 by the shelter provider. And they come with behavioral health supports. They come with case management. They come with substance abuse support. They come with access or navigation to housing and medical supports. So the idea is that when somebody, instead of sleeping on a tent, can come into these, get their resources all right there, and get them ready to move to the next step and not go right back onto our streets, right? Because that's what we're seeing so much of, is this circular system of people accessing services and then it doesn't work out and they're back on our street, and that's not working for any of us. So then for the sites, and y'all are going to be able to ask plenty of questions. We're going to have so much time for it. It's going to be fun. So a little bit about shelters. So pre the emergency housing declaration that happened in 2015, I think, 16, 15. There were 7 adult shelters in Portland. And at this point, or in March, sorry, I can't say at this point, one more opened up, so I know that there's one more. There were 38 in March shelters, and those include youth shelters, family shelters, which I know that you all have a family shelter here in Lents already, They include, domestic violence or women's shelters, and just all different types of shelters. So it's expanded a lot, but what we haven't done is we haven't kept up with the current number of people that need that shelter, right? And of course, this is a continuum, so we also need to keep up, and this gets kind of out of my realm, but with creating additional housing for people to have, because if we don't have the housing, there's no place for them to go. That was not part of the presentation, sorry. But that stuff's happening. I hope that y'all had a chance to learn like the Metro Housing Bond and the supportive housing services and stuff like that, which definitely gets out of my realm of expertise, but there are housing opportunities coming into the realm. And so the idea is that these are temporary. They will help get people off the street, and then people get off the street, and then we don't need them all anymore. And hopefully we can, we're funded for 3 years. So it's, at this point, it's not looking permanent. And so then the Safe Rest Village sites. So I'm sure you've all heard, we also have the outdoor alternative shelters that were originally the emergency shelters, which I'm sure you all saw, or a lot of you saw, and I'm sure you've seen pictures. There are 2 of them were on Water Avenue, and then 1 of them was in Old Town. And all those were set up at the very beginning of the pandemic, and they were set up with city and county support and a lot of volunteer support. And originally they just had tents, and then they had pallets that they put their tents on, and then they got a fence, and then they were like, oh no, this is going into the winter, right? And those were really important because, now they're calling my other phone. So those were really important because when the pandemic happened, the shelter capacity was pretty much cut in half. So we saw all these people that were already accessing shelter didn't know where to go. And so people did a lot of really great work, and they are not safe rest villages. They ended up looking like other outdoor shelters, and a lot of people reference them to the Safe Rest Village, and we have been moving them in that direction. We took them over in September. They were included into our realm, and they're still outdoor alternative shelters, but now they have a service provider that's there 24/7. We installed flushing toilets and showers, because before they just had porta potties. They were self-managed, which is a model that some people like, but that's not the model we're using. We're using managed by shelter providers. We moved one of them, and we're moving another one here very soon, and that's the one going to Southwest NATO. And so Southwest NATO, 2300 block, is what we're calling the Queer Affinity Village. It's another outdoor alternative shelter. It is not technically a safe rest village, but it made more sense to keep those running than to close them down and displace all those people. Because yes, we could have put a safe rest village on Southwest NATO, but then we would have to close Queer Affinity Village, right? So it makes more sense to keep those people sheltered. So then we have the Sears Armory location, which is on Multnomah Boulevard in Southwest Portland. We have the Peninsula Crossing Trail location, which is in North Portland. We have the Sunderland location, which is on 33rd near Columbia by the airport. And that is actually going to be an RV safe park, which I'm happy to answer questions about that too later if you all want me to. We have, let's see if I can remember all. We got the Menlo Park location on 122nd in Burnside.
Don't forget Lents.
I'm getting to yours last because I'm going to talk now. Okay, I know there's another. I'm trying to count now. Let me look at my phone and make sure see if I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that one. No, I think that's all of them. Oh, in Northwest NATO as well. So NATO's runs through downtown. So there's one in Northwest and one on Southwest NATO. So now we go to the one on 106th in Reedway. So that site was purchased originally, and this is my understanding of things. I might be a little bit wrong. I feel like I have a pretty good idea, but please don't be like, Jake is the expert about everything. But that was purchased by the city because they thought it might have the environmental area that Bigger Stick has. I think if you go online, you can see where the environmental overlay lays. And so most of that property is not. And so the city's been trying to figure out who can use it and who's going to use it. And there's been different plans. I know that Portland Parks wanted to use it as a storage site for like putting different soils and other things to help clean up, pick up parks or maintain parks. But it doesn't have any utilities added. It has no power, it has no water or anything like that. And so there's been like the development cost associated with that. So that's how it kind of came into our umbrella. It's not being used for anything. It's a vacant piece of property. There's been people camping on it. I think anybody that's been out there has seen the damage of people camping in that area. And so it was announced as a safe rest village. It was included in the emergency declaration the mayor put out. And it works out really well. It's a pretty large piece of property. I think it's about 4 acres, maybe 5. And so we only need about less than a half of it, because we're looking about using about 1.5 acres. So trying to figure out what to do with the rest of it. And I know that there has been concerns about the environmental, what is it called, the contamination of the soil. And we know that it was remediated. We've got the reports that it was remediated. That being said, I know that they're going to do more tests once we have a site plan, just to ensure that the space that it gets put in is safe for the people that are staying there. And I guess I can stop there and just kind of start answering questions, because I can guess what you're going to ask me all day, but I think it's better if we just go for it. So, yeah.
Okay, how many sites, how many pods or?
That's a good, see, I should have just said. Yeah, so it's most likely going to have 60. And so the Safe Rest Villages at a max can have 60 sleeping units or pods. Most of them will be there. So Safe Rest Villages allow an individual, a partner, or pets, right? That being said, what we've seen is we don't see a lot of partners. So when I say 60 and I'm like, partners are allowed, everybody's like 120 people. What we've seen with the other outdoor shelters is usually like 2 to 4 couples. A lot of times they really like their space, and they might come in as a couple and then both have move into one of the empty pods as they come. So not 120 people, it's probably closer to between 60 and 65.
How long will it take to get this up and running?
That is the $1 million question. I shouldn't say $1 million question, but like that's a big question. So right now, a lot of we're getting close to opening the Southwest NATO location and the Sears Armory location, and those will be open soon. I think that we're looking at really focusing on the RV safe park after that. I know that that's a really big need, and there's a lot of RVs around. I think our goal is to open them all before the end of the year. So we're looking at sometime in the fall probably.
So you have electricity and sewer there?
We are running electricity and sewer to it, yeah. And that will be good, because it will also make it so that when the Safe Rest Village is no longer there, it becomes more useful property for the next use, right? So if Parks wants to use it after that, the water and sewer is already on site. So
What's the cost on that? Because there was a thing with LA, and they had, I don't know, like 13, it cost them $5 million, and they already own the land. So it was so, even the mayor, when he's trying to say, oh yes, we're opening up this village, but it was like for 13 people or something, and it cost $5 million.
yeah, so the development costs are usually less than $1 million. Between buying the shelter units, which obviously will last forever and be able to, not forever, nothing lasts forever, but will last longer than the use of the site, but they can be moved to the next site and so forth for the next people. I think that, and I think we have this all on our website. I know that not everybody goes to websites, that's totally okay. But saferestvillages.org, gotta throw that plug in there. I think it's like $200,000 to $300,000 to develop the site itself, and then like $500,000 to something $100,000 for the units, right? But the units stay with us, right? The rest of the development costs, like running the sewer and water, will just make the land more usable for the next tenants.
Are these similar to the ones that are in like Vancouver? Because they just don't.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
I want to answer this person's question, and then if you have more, we can
No,
come back,
no,
okay?
I think I'm done.
Yeah.
I probably have other questions that will fit.
Okay.
So I think, I've heard that these systems work when they're in place, they do good things for the people that are in them. What's the process for getting people to these safe rest villages? Because my understanding is, of the people surveyed on the street, between Foster, Knapp, 92nd, there are amongst them lots of people there.
Yeah.
Something like 75% said they wouldn't go to one of these because of rules or whatever reason they have.
So, I can't talk about the survey, I don't have the survey, but I'll talk about a couple of things with that. The first thing is that one of the emergency declarations that the mayor had stood up what's called the SSCC, which is the Street Services Coordination Center. And with that became the Incident Command Center that kind of like really is looking at how we can help people move into resources, right? There's been so many people expressing that there isn't space, like people aren't getting to the spaces. So how do we help them get to the spaces, right? And it's about referring them in. And yeah, there are people that maybe aren't ready to go in. And one of the things I've said about that is making sure that we have a robust system. And so Safe Rest Villages is part of that system. Having a robust system that meets different people's needs, right? Because different people have different wants and different needs in the places that they go to. And so if we create different opportunities and we create more opportunities for people, they're going to be more likely to go in. And I know, so the outdoor shelter model has been really, like, we have a ton of people that are just wanting to get into them. Like it is a popular sheltering model because it's one of the only sheltering models, not the only, one of the sheltering models that allows people to have their own space instead of sleeping in a room with a whole bunch of other people. And that's a really desired sheltering model. And they can bring their pets and they can bring their partners, which a lot of shelters don't have those services. So
drugs are super rampant here. I witness daily drug deals, 8 a.m. right down the Knapp every day. How is that going to be mitigated? And I see the drug dealers in the same car come up and practically give it away, and then they get hooked, and now they have a whole community of people to sell to. And you can't call the police, you can't say there's a drug deal going on right now, it's impossible.
So, and when somebody starts accessing services, one of the first things that you do is you do an assessment, right? And this is one of the important things about like bringing people into services is you get this chance to talk to them about the barriers that they might have to getting long-term stable housing or getting employment. Sometimes that's drug addiction, sometimes it's alcohol abuse, sometimes it's mental health, other mental health stuff. And so that's the idea of having those supports there on site, is so that if people do need those supports, they're available and we can help transition people, to a safer place, right? One of the things, a lot of times people have this idea that the people in shelter are going to be exactly what they're seeing with people out of services that are sleeping in tents on their street or in their cars. And the reality is it's going to look a lot different. And the reason why is because the people that are sleeping on a tent on your sidewalk are dealing with a lot of stuff. And their tent gets moved, they can't sleep at night, they have to, there's just a lot of trauma with living that way on the street. And when they come into services and they have that safe space, we see them being able to access resources to help them move to the next place, right? So that people I'm not going to say that nobody's going to use drugs, because that's not real, right? But the idea is that we create a space for them to be able to move past their drug habit, because they're not going to move past it unless there's the space to do that. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Good.
I got one question back here and then I'll come to you, okay? Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned drug use, and that's a reality of life on the streets as well as elsewhere. What I'm curious, it's my understanding that people coming into these safe rest villages will not be vetted. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
So So Safe Rest Villages are a low barrier to entry, but with an acceptance that there's services there and people will be getting services, and the goal is to move them into long-term housing. So the referral process, they get referred by a first responder or a navigation team or another social service provider. Then they make the decision to go to the Safe Rest Village. So nobody's going to be picked up and just dropped off, right? Because that's not going to help anybody. It's just going to piss people off, and they're going to throw things, and they're going to leave, right? And we don't want that, right? So they show up, so they've already made the first step, right, to showing up. And that's a really important thing with anybody that's ever had addiction or issues, right? Is the first thing is you making the first step to move past it. And then the shelter operator will have a code of conduct and have criterions in place to be like, hey, if you're making it unsafe for my staff or for yourself or for other villagers or the community, you're not going to be in this space, right? It's terrible. Believe me, I've done it. Kicking people out of the place that they sleep is hard, right? But you have a responsibility as a shelter operator to create a safe space for everybody, right? And so they don't necessarily have to be clean and sober, but if they're creating a danger to the people inside the village, then they won't be in the village or the community, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, my concern is twofold.
Yeah.
Are you feeling comfortable that you actually have enough employees, providers of these services, because there's such an acute shortage in general across the board that I have some grave concerns about oversight at any Safe Rest Village, particularly in the evening, the night.
Yeah. So with our current shelter provider, Olga, who's been in charge of running the current outdoor shelters that we're taking over, they always have at least 3 staff on site, and they've been able to hold that commitment of always having overnight staff and always having daytime staff. So maybe one of them calls out, but that still puts 2 full-time staff over the night. So that is something that is across the board. I think something that every industry is worried about is employment. And I know that there's been a lot of talks way above me about how they can help create more stability for social service providers and employment. So far it's been working. So and the person will be contracted by the joint office to do that. And so if they're not doing it, joint office is either going to work with them to help get them to that place, or we're going to have to find a shelter provider. So, sir.
Shar invited me. I met her 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm going to stand up for a minute.
Okay.
I have a lot of concerns as well. A lot of you don't know me. My name is Desmond. I have 10 years clean off of cocaine and 18 months clean off of alcohol. Okay? I've given a lot back to the community. To answer a few of your questions and concerns, 80% of the people on the streets are clean and sober. It's the 20% that aren't. And a lot of them have lost their housing and whatnot because of COVID, because of the economy. How do I know this? Because I go downtown and I feed people out of my own pocket. I'm on disability, and 90% of what I get goes out of my house. I live on 10. Okay? My concern is the same as all of these. Okay? My house manager, Steve Eichert, he works with Do Good, veterans only. He's familiar with All Good. Okay? They have this in downtown Portland where Tent City used to be. And my concern as well is this, okay, is that there are a lot of people who come out of addiction, who come out of alcoholism, who go and get their certificates, but they have an arrogance about them that, yeah, I'm a badass because I conquered this. I am one who is humbled to still be alive today because I should be dead 30 times over. So my concerns are these, is number one, okay, the staff that you guys are hiring, are they street smart? And are they book smart, or did they just go to classes to do this? Because, and I'll tell you why. Those who have gone to college and learned this don't know what it's like to be on the streets. They don't know what it's like to have that criminal mind. They don't know what it's like to get out of that and be humble and grateful for what they have. So my first question is, are you hiring people who have been there, done that, to run these shelters and know the chronic behaviors and are willing to not pull janky activity and behaviors.
Yeah, and first off, thank you for sharing your experience. I'll share a little bit about myself. I was homeless when I was a kid, as a youth. I lived in a car with my family for quite some time, and lived on the streets as a teenager. And so I have the experience as well. It probably looks a lot different than your experience.
Homelessness is homelessness to me.
And what I will say is that I know the Joint Office has made a huge commitment to making sure that they're hiring people with lived experience. From my meetings with them and my interactions with them, they look to be honoring that commitment. And I know that I think it gets into this pay thing, right? Going to college is really expensive. Our society values that college experience, and this gets into a whole different realm that I'm not this is me on my soapbox, right? Social workers should get paid more money, right? People deserve to make a living wage, right? And people working with our most vulnerable populations deserve to make a fair and equal wage, right? So they should be able to pay for school. They should be able to pay to, feed themselves and provide. I know that when I have a master's degree in psychology. I went and got a job working with houseless folks, and I made $16 an hour.
I know.
And that
doesn't cover your student loan.
Yeah, it doesn't. Exactly. So, I know that there's a commitment to hire people with lived experience. And
my second question is, Blackburn Center, okay, the third floor is committed to people who are intense outpatient care. Mm-hmm. The fourth and fifth floors, you don't need to be clean and sober. The hard part for me, being a former user, is walking through that area and having people shooting up dope, smoking heroin, needles on the floor, catching the bus in front of kids. These guys are smoking crack in that. Okay, my con about having this in this neighborhood is I come from that lifestyle, and when I see people using dope in or outside of a combine, which is supposed to be a safe place, in front of kids, especially in a nice neighborhood like this, it brings a lot of concern of what you just said, that they don't need to be clean or sober, which I think needs to be a requirement of them being there, because if not, that causes for theft, that causes for boosting from stores, that causes for the kids walking down and stepping on needles. I used to live in Mount 205, and these guys would throw their freaking needles into school, excuse my language. There's a preschool there. These people are throwing needles in the preschool, and one lady jumped the fence and stripped naked and took a shower in front of them. So my concern is, if you're not enforcing sobriety or cleanliness, that's going to affect the neighborhood that you're putting these pods in, and that's my concern.
So I got two different things for that. The first one is that's where a code of conduct comes into play, right? If somebody is creating an unsafe place or an unsafe environment for the neighborhood, community members, children, the people in the village, the shelter operator, right? Then that person's not going to be able to stay in the village, right? And then also, by us having a requirement that people be clean and sober, that means that the idea, there's two different models, right? There's the one that says we require you to be clean and sober to come into services. Mm-hmm. Then what you have is you have your people, the 20% that you said 20% of our houseless folks, which would be about 1,200 people, right? You would have them sleeping on our streets, using drugs on our streets. If we could bring them into service, provide services to them, provide a safe place for them, and get them to move past their addiction, and help them move past their addiction, then we don't have them sleeping on our streets anymore. We don't have them littering our streets and stuff like that.
So my question is, I'm on heroin, for example, or I'm taking fentanyl. Okay? I'm higher than a kite, right? Me coming to this program, I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but heroin and fentanyl are the hardest two drugs to kick, because it's a live bacteria and it eats your body. Okay? Now I'm coming in there, you're encouraging me to be clean. It takes 14 days for it to completely exit the body, at least 30 days to kick the habit. Okay? So what kind of program do you guys have instilled for them to be encouraged to not do this? Because you're talking about finding them housing, finding them jobs. And 98% of job market out there right now, they will drug test you.
So, I mean, I said that a little bit when I was talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm late also.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of people, you know, like you said, there's a lot of people living on the streets that aren't using drugs and maybe are just looking for a safe place to be, and they're ready to move on to housing or they're ready to get a job. Some people aren't, right? And so then that is, you know, getting them connected to resources and helping them go into, you know, an inpatient program or something like that, something that's more intensive that meets their needs. It's a lot easier to do if they're in one spot. Trying to meet Joe out on the street one day on this corner and then find him 2 weeks later to help connect him to a service is almost impossible.
No, I get it.
Right? So yeah, I hear your concerns. I think you know, that totally, I hear it. And I think, at least my experience working as a social provider, or so, you know, in with houseless folks, you know, experiencing addiction is that it's a lot easier to work with people if you know where they're at.
So what you're saying is that it would be a more controlled environment where, like you said, if they're doing anything that is sketchy or janky or pulling certain behaviors, you guys will not tolerate that.
I mean, sketchy and janky are hard to quantify, but no, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of you.
Well, no,
but
true story is this.
but-
I have a guy who's been in our house for 5 years, and he's on disability, and he works volunteering, giving fentanyl shots. And the other day he comes up to me and goes, yeah, I got a booster, man. You need anything, let me know. This guy's got 5 years clean. And I got a guy who's taking stolen items, living in my house. When I see janky or sketchy, that's what I'm talking about.
So, I mean, so there's a couple parts of this. Every social service provider, you know, it is our responsibility to make sure that the spaces are safe for people, right?
Okay.
And again, if somebody's creating an unsafe environment, then they're not going to be in that space, right?
So is this for like single people, married people, couples, children, all of that?
So not children, there's a different system for family sheltering.
Okay.
So this is for people 18 and older. Couples can move in, but most of the time we find that it's individuals. People can also bring their pets.
Well, as long as you guys provide a safe and secure environment and you guys have a zero tolerance level for, you know, that kind of stuff, and if you guys are willing to work with intensive patient programs and you have the connections already, you know, that's something to consider, because I know the one downtown.
So the ones downtown, the emergency shelters that were set up at the beginning of the pandemic, and sorry for some of you, this is a repeat, they were set up in response to COVID. They didn't have the services provided that's going to be provided at these safe rest villages. We just brought a social service provider that staffs them 24/7, I think in October, right? And so the 3 villages got full-time staff, you know, and of course, it's a big change, right? From a more self-managed model to having a shelter model. So there was this transitionary time, but they're seeing good results. I think I was just chatting with them today. They've housed, or placed, I think it's called placement, right? 32 people, which is wonderful. And I think that's just going to become more as they're interacting with these people, and people are coming in with the expectation of moving to further sources, right?
Last question. Yeah. Do you guys work with Do Good? Are you guys a part of the same subsidiary, or?
As far as I know, we're not going to be running any veterans.
No, I understand, but I mean, is it like under the same umbrella? Because I'm familiar with Do Good because of Steve.
All Good is one of the shelter providers that's contracted with the joint office. All Good is separated from Do Good. So Do Good, and I'm not an expert on Do Good. I don't work for Do Good. I don't work for All Good. I have met Andy and I've listened to him tell this a lot, so that's why I can kind of talk about it. But the way I understand it is that there was this need to provide services to more than just veterans, and so the organization then created All Good to serve people outside of the veterans status. So
that explains a lot.
So they're similar in some ways. I know that Andy, the executive director of All Good, worked for Do Good before, and then All Good is like a.
So I know you have a question,
all people.
But real quick, I've got a lot of information from Do Good,
No,
and they do a lot of good with the veterans. So if it's run similarly, then it would be. I think it would be a good program.
Yeah, their motel shelters are awesome.
Yeah, so thank you
How
for the
long is
information.
somebody get to stay?
So we're looking, To begin with, we were saying 3 to 6 months. We've been told that that's a little bit unrealistic, so we moved it to 6 to 9 months. It takes a little while for somebody to get settled, right? Somebody needs somewhere, if you haven't had a good night's sleep in a while and haven't had food for a while, right? You need a couple days, or a little bit of time to get going. So looking at 6 to 9 months to help somebody move to the next step. There's no hard line. It's like if somebody's working towards moving to the next step, we don't want to just kick them to the street. But if somebody's not, then it's not the right place for them. So.
And is there enough beds for rehab, or, is there enough beds if somebody wants to get off drugs and places to go?
That's a really good question. I don't know that much about the treatment centers. I do know that when we are connecting people, it takes a while because usually we need to get them on health insurance. You need to get them certain things before we can get them into a treatment center. It felt like sometimes it moved really quick and then sometimes it moved really slow.
So I can answer
that
question. So the Union Gospel Mission in downtown, you go through a process, but it is Christ-based, but they call it spiritual, so they can get their 501c3 funding. Portland Rescue Mission, you stay there for about 30 days. Harbor will take you in, and as far as St. Vincent de Paul, which is done at Adventist Mount 205, they change their name to something else, but you have to be dual diagnosed, and it's a 30 to 60 day program. If you're coming out of prison, there's bridges to change, you have 90 days. And most of them, if you don't have insurance, they'll take you in immediately, and while you're there, they will work with you to get insurance and whatnot. And a lot of them are working, working programs like truck driving, go out, pick up deliveries, working in a store, working in the shelter. So Salvation Army, ARC, they will take you in. They're another spiritual program. So there are beds available consistently because there's a high turnover, but it's just a matter of them being able to pass whatever it is that they need to get in, because some places you got to be clean 30 days and come out of detox. Other places they'll take you in immediately and you start the next day. But it's up to that person who really wants the help to stay there. And a lot of them will go in just to have 3 hots in a cot or get out of prison. And through the process, hopefully the seed is planted.
So you had another question?
I do.
And then you.
Pushback from the neighbors. I know Reedway, it's a big topic on Nextdoor and Facebook. The Safe Rest Villages seem inevitable. That's great. The pods are ordered, is my understanding, and they're coming somewhere. But I know down at Reedway, the neighbors, we have a shooting on 92nd last night, and then next to Baker's Tick, where we have waterway issues in Johnson Creek, which is another worry. And then I do really want to hear about the RV, because that's a huge topic.
Yeah. What I found, and I'm sure people have a lot of feelings about this, is usually when we can have a conversation with somebody, there's a little bit less pushback. When we talk about what's there and what this is actually, we're planning on this looking like, people are like, okay, that makes a lot more sense, right? People have it in their brains that we're just going to put a fence up and then people are going to throw their tents up and then it's a free-for-all, and that's not what this is, right? And so the more people I engage with, if you want to encourage them to reach out to me or anybody on my team, that would be a huge help. It's hard for me to talk to every single person, but we're doing our best just to provide as much information as possible. I'll talk about the RV Safe Park in a second. I'm going to let him ask his question.
I'm new to Portland. I just had a question regarding, does Portland have an integrated intake system?
No.
So everybody is sort of modular?
Yeah, and that's not, it's again, not really my expertise. My understanding is that there's not an integrated service, or what is it called? ICS. I feel like it's ICS, which is Instant Command System, but not the right acronym. They don't, and I know that there's been a lot of talk about it. I don't know where it's at, but that would be something the Joint Office of Homeless Services would probably oversee. I know that the SSCC is working on something similar for shelter beds for people, but I would have to let them talk about that. I would hate to say something about it.
What's the total capacity for the 38 shelters? Do you have an idea?
I I think I have it down here. 38. Oh, I don't have the number on here. I can get it for you. I'll give you my card, and I have it. I can get you the most up-to-date information. Okay. Yeah. And then you had a question?
Yeah, I'm curious, in these safe rest villages, does one assume then that you're going to have substance abusers along with non-substance abusers in the same village?
So, I think that a lot of social workers accept that there's going to be people in different spaces. If somebody is negatively impacting somebody else, that is a hard thing to navigate.
Yeah.
But you need to make sure that you're creating a safe space for people, right? So if somebody is creating an unsafe space for somebody else because of their use, that's going to be something that the service provider is really going to have to deal with on an individual basis. It always looks a little different. So.
Well, and I'm not kidding your feet to the floor, but it strikes me as a setup for failure. If you're going to have different populations like that, the drug abusers who need their next fix, along with people who aren't. And I don't understand my thought that drives that, because I don't see that as a recipe for success. And I'm curious, are any of the safe rest villages up and running right now?
No.
And when do you imagine the first one? When do you imagine the first one will be?
The Sears Armory, like I said, the QA village is opening soon, but that's not going to be one because it's an alternative outdoor shelter. By the end of the month, the first one will open.
Where?
Sears Armory.
Where's that at?
It's on Multnomah Boulevard, Southwest Multnomah. I
So-
saw it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is Matt Huff here? Okay.
So I am going in
Last
last time.
question.
So this will be my last question, but I have cards. I gave Char some, but I also have my own. I'm happy to give people cards. I'm happy to have a conversation about this and continue talking. I think that dialogue is wonderful and a great place to. I think that by having dialogue, we understand things better, and that's how we learn and appreciate things. So
I just want, is it in the floodplain?
no,
Okay.
no.
And so I've tried to get to see the place, and I can't see. So how do you get in to 106th and
You have to go
Ridge?
down the street.
So
It's-
go down Foster to what? To turn in?
Oh,
Huh? 104th?
Yeah, I don't know the exact directions. Right now, I know that the neighbor has been parking trailers in front of the access point
Yeah.
because people were dumping stuff back there, and so
Yeah.
it's the way of stopping people from dumping. When you go back there, you'll see it definitely needs some attention. There's been some.
And you can have meals there too, you said?
Yeah, meals. There's at least one meal a day with snacks throughout the day, and there's a kitchenette so people can microwave food or
Portable showers, I'm sure.
and there's showers on site and bathrooms and stuff. So
Before you leave outside, I have a question for you.
cool. Yeah, Matt. Sorry, I don't mean to get into
You're
time.
fine. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, I will. I know that there's more questions, and I could probably take up the whole time. I know that Matt. If there's more time, I'm happy to answer more questions. I will also give out my business, my cards. Okay. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You really could just keep.
Well, Matt, make it short.
They
so
started.
you
I can't. They
can-
started to be like 5 minutes early, so I'm already 10 minutes over.
I'm Matt Huff. I am pastor at Central Nazarene Church, which is right over off of, 97th-ish and 205, right across from the TriMet garage. Right across the street from you. I've been in Portland for about 8 years. I was over in Prineville for about 7. I am a transplant. I grew up in West Virginia, so Oregon's better. So 8 years ago when I came to Central, we had campers all over our property, and the church has had, stories, telling me stories of of what's been going on in the community. And so we started just trying to figure out what does it look like for us to exist as a church. And so we just really had a desire to do a better job of loving God and loving our neighbor. And so we started to engage with our neighbors, who most of which are intense, because after 5 o'clock, most of our neighbors are gone because they're all businesses. And so we started to just get to know our community, and we started to get to know the folks that were camping on our property or across the street. We started doing some volunteer work with some other efforts in the community, like Operation Night Watch was where we first really started getting involved. And then we started as a winter shelter with Clackamas County, which was weird because we're in Multnomah County, but that's a whole other story. For 2 winters we did that. And so we just started seeing this huge need, and we have 11 acres that parallels 205 and is surrounded by ODOT property and Water Bureau property. So we just started trying to dream about what can we do, how can we use our property instead of trying to kick people off the property. How do we actually be neighbors? So in all of this, we started to hear about these village things that were popping up. And so we went down to Eugene and met with Dan Bryant and Square One Villages to explore what they were doing. And when we were having these conversations, it was right around the same time that Kent Women's Village was being built and starting to open up. And so we talked with Catholic Charities and Kent Women's Village. And so I'm just trying to give you kind of a history of where we're at. And so since then, we just decided, let's do this. We have what used to be a rock quarry on our property that was nice and flat, and it's about 1 acre or so. That everybody that we had come to the property said that would be a great spot to put a village. And so we thought, well, this is fantastic. And so as a pastor, my thought was, who's going to build it and who's going to manage it? Because I don't want to. Well, then, as God does often, he changes plans and he says, no, you're going to build it and you'll manage it. So we built Agape Village with all volunteer labor and volunteer support and donations. So it took us 2 or 3 summers to actually get our pods built. They're all 8 by 12, stick built, insulated units. We've been open since December of 2019. And since that time, we've developed all kinds of partnerships that are super important for what we're doing because we don't have a huge staff. So we partner with Union Gospel Mission, Providence Medical, several other churches. So in addition to the village, we're still doing winter shelter through the end of this month, actually, with UGM. We do showers every Saturday. We do a meal once a week. We do case management for not just our villagers, but for our community members at large. So helping with all those ID things and birth certificate things and bus tickets or whatever, rides to and from appointments if needed, and then all kinds of other fun and exciting things. So since we opened the village in December 2019, we have probably had around 30 people through our village, and we've seen people move into apartments. We've seen folks leave Agape to go into residential treatment. We've seen people leave and go back on the street. We've seen people reconnected with family members. And we even had a gentleman most recently buy his own house, which was super exciting. And so we've kind of gone through the gamut with that. The village is, I'm not going to say it's low barrier. It's probably not as low barrier as the Safe Rest Villages. So we are a different model. We do conduct background checks. So so we didn't have to convince an entire city of Safe Rest Villages, which is nice. We just had to convince a church. I don't know which is harder. But we, so in all of this, we don't take sex offenders, and we don't take anybody with recent person-to-person crimes or open warrants that they're unwilling to deal with.
Felonies only or misdemeanors included?
It depends on the person-to-person crime.
Okay.
Depends.
The reason I asked, if I may, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
is because there the Measure 11 assault department is really crappy because, I mean, accidents happen, you know, and the way the court system is right now, there's a lot of people who have assault 1, 2, 3, 4 charges on them, and it was an accident, and it prevents them from certain things. So
it depends. We talk to each person and figure out what's going on.
Okay. That's great because a lot of people just read paper. You know? Oh, you're on paper, so you're a bad person.
Every person that applies to the village sits down with us for an hour to talk about what they're looking for, what our expectations are, so that we're all on the same page. We currently have 7 people in Agape Village. We have space for 13. Every person that comes into the village meets with our village manager every 30 days to set goals towards transition. We don't have a hard and fast line on how long somebody can stay as long as they're working towards transition. We are talking about changing that to where we will have like a 12-month limit, but it's kind of a loose limit where there can be exceptions and people can stay longer if there's need to. We have our own on-staff case management. We have support through Providence's VA program with peer support and case management. Our missing piece for us is mental health. We don't have any solid mental health support on site, so that's for us a big need and something that we are definitely trying to remedy through partnerships or through fundraising. Go ahead.
What would you do differently if you had to do it all over again?
If I had to do it all over again, I would get all the money that we needed to build everything first, and then build it. Because there were days where we had...
We have that.
There were days where we had volunteers and no material, or material and no volunteers. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing I would, just from ground up that I would do different.
Sometimes if you give everybody, if you give them the tools to work with, well, I'm gonna try to say this. If people live in your pod, okay, do they take care of the area around it, or that, you know what I'm saying? They're part of that community, just like, we all rake our own leaves, and we all take care of our own house, so is that part of their requirement?
Yes, so everybody that moves in, they have to contribute to the village.
Right.
So they all have a chore of some sort, whether it be cleaning up the common spaces, or there's a shared grill, so cleaning the grill and the sink, or cleaning the bathroom.
Right.
Well, actually, we don't have a bathroom yet. We're porta potties right now, but we did just get utilities to our site, so we'll have that soon. So
I actually have a question for both of you. This kind of, yeah.
It's his time.
No, I'm done. A question for you to think about. Okay, is my concern is that, again, like I said, with Black Concern and some of these other shelters, okay, they're building a lot of you may not know this, they're building a 169 unit with 167 parking stalls on Paul and 125th, with a 5,000 square foot liquor store going into Paul Villa, and there's already a pot shop right across the street. Okay, the concern that I have is that these places have a tendency, like Blackburn Center, to attract people who are homeless, to camp out there, to sleep there, to live there. And the police department, city and county, does nothing, they can't do anything to remove them. So my question is, and maybe you can answer this outside later, is what prevents the homeless people from sleeping on your property outside the pod to be noticed or to be seen or to say, hey, we're people too and you're not letting us in, so screw you, we're going to sleep here. Off your property.
So for us, we have, like I said, we have 11 acres. The village is in the middle of the property. It's not visible from anywhere except 205. So it's not constantly in people's faces that are camped across the street. There are camps all the way around us, not on our property.
Well, 205 is known for that. So.
We have a separate from the village. The church has a live on property kind of security guard that kind of helps us police the property and make sure that people aren't setting up camps on our property. And then I also attribute it to the fact that we have built over the years a tremendous relationship with all of the folks in our community. So those that frequent our property for other services, even outside of the village, they have a tremendous respect for and appreciation for the things that we offer. So we are able to go to people if we know that people are camping on our property and say, hey, you can't camp here, and they respect that. We have a lady that's camped just off our property that is on the backside that's hard to access, that's actually said to me, I'm making sure nobody goes over there. So we've just built
Except her,
a relationship. I don't care if she does, but she's just making sure of that. So we do what we can to manage our space, and then the folks that are in the peripheral around us, we've just developed relationships with the camps, and almost all of them come over to the church multiple times throughout the week for various services, or just to fill up their water bottles, or use
So you're
their
planting a seed of what God would ask us to do.
Yeah, they know we're there, and not all of them are. Yeah, our village is
religious or spiritual.
Well, our village doesn't have any religious requirements, but it is clean and sober. So I mean, that's just it. Some of them aren't ready to take that step.
Okay, so that is one of your requirements.
Yeah, they have to be clean and sober.
Abstinence.
If they come to us and they're in their addiction and they want to get clean, we have a relationship with Hooper where we can do referrals to Hooper, and so we do a lot of referrals. We encourage people to stay with their program because they have far more support services than what we do. And I don't like setting people up for failure. So when people come to us from our community that are in addictions, I don't feel like it's setting them up for success to say, come stay in our village that's right across the street from your dealer. So we really try to connect people with services outside of our community, just so that it gives them a better place to move. We have certainly had people stay in our village that are from the community. We just have to be more on top of it with holding them accountable to their decision to stay sober. So we do random UAs and that kind of stuff.
What's the closest residence to your property?
We have a group of housed people off of Division. So north of our property, there's a community just off of Division.
So approximately how far?
From our property line, I would say probably 500 feet or better.
And that's on Division and what?
That'd be Division and what is that street? 99th, 100?
So you've got, the first homes are 500 feet from your property. You've got 11-acre property.
Mm-hmm.
Using an acre for the shelters, right?
Yeah.
And your capacity is 13 people?
We have 15 pods, 13 are usable at the moment.
So
2 of them are
15
storage.
15 people for an acre?
Yeah.
And so last time that the city did a count for homeless, it was in 2019.
No.
And I believe it was let me finish. I believe it was 3,500. And they just did one, I think, a week or two ago, and it came about 6,500.
No, sorry, it's 5,228.
Well, according to the mayor, it was 6,500.
According to the Joint Office of Homeless Services and PSU, who conducted the study, it's 5,228.
So who is
I can
the
send
mayor?
it to you.
The mayor of Humboldt Village, who says there's 20,000, or PSU who has an interest, that says 5,200.
So that's
PSU and the Joint Office conducted the study, and there might be issues with the study, but the number that was
Where did the
released
mayor
is
come up with this
5.
number?
I can't speak for the mayor.
Where did Humboldt Williams come up with this number?
I'm just telling you what the Joint Office put out was 5,228.
So the Safe Routes Village is if their capacity, 360 people, is that accurate?
Probably a little bit less than that.
Okay. So, in my point of view, we've got an absolute catastrophe. Catastrophe for the neighbors and catastrophe for the homeless. And I guess that I just don't have I don't feel any sense of urgency. We're talking about 5,000, and you guys are putting the holy grail on 360 max.
So
There's less
yeah,
than 1%.
just so what I'll say is, so about 2,000 of those people are already in services. So about 3,000 people are sleeping on shelter. What was the count showed? Whether it's probably plus or minus, right? And a lot of us would think plus. And this is my thing. I agree. It's sense of urgency, right? And I wish, and everybody on my team wishes that we could do this faster and set things up faster. But I will say also, we're not the only system. As you know, there's two of us here tonight on two different systems completely. I don't know anything about, like I had nothing to do with this work, right? So there's a lot of different work. We're just one of the programs. I was told there's like 1,000 or 1,200 shelter beds coming into the system this year, which is a huge increase. So,
Well, the biggest issue, and I'm agreeing with you, is this right now, is that I know Spencer, and he works with Echelon, they're trying to start a nonprofit to help the homeless. The sad part is that Governor Brown set out whatever you want to call it, that actually pays the homeless people $1,000 a month to be homeless. $500 in cash, $500 in SNAP benefits, and she now wants to pass a law to raise the income tax to 5% on all grocery items to increase that level to enable them to being homeless, which I think is absolutely horrendous. And the only solution that I see on the homeless issue is, if we take that away, they're going to steal. They already have it, they're still stealing. So what is the solution?
They can steal $950 a day, per store. They will not be prosecuted.
It's 900, brother.
So,
$900 a day.
Jake's right at the top here.
This is insane.
So this is what I'm not trying to dismiss what you're saying at all, but you have two people here that are working on providing services, right? And I understand that houselessness is a huge issue. It's the biggest issue reported in Portlanders.
It's not houselessness.
Just a second,
It's,
sir,
it's
please.
drug addiction and it's mental illness. Until you guys figure that out, this is not going to get solved.
So,
Period.
just a second, sir. So these are some services that are being set up to provide and try to come up with a solution. They are not the only part of the whole solution. And I know it's urgent, I know it's impacting all of us. It really does. Like my house is right off of 205. So the people camping along 205 are right next to my house, right?
And when I get on-
So we're all seeing it, right? And you can blame and you can tell me that we're not doing enough, but we're doing something, and there's a lot of different things happening. And if you want more to happen, continue to advocate for more to happen. But this here, I just want to bring us kind of back, right? We're talking about some villages right now.
It's a start.
We're not talking about houses and people in general, right? We can talk about that all day. But let's talk about our villages and what we're doing and the solutions we're coming up with. So if it's good, I'd love to hear more about what Matt's got to say.
Well, just to
Matt's like, time? Is it time?
Well, just to speak into that, like, one of the things we've learned so we have run, the first time we got into winter shelter, it was total no barrier. I won't even say low barrier, I'll just say no barrier shelter. So we've experienced that. We've got a shelter now that is low barrier. We've got a village that's probably more closer to the higher barrier and with some of the requirements to move in. And what I've seen in my experience with all of these things is that it's going to take all of those things. We have tons of needs, like you mentioned, the mental illness and the drug addictions. We have all of those things represented on the street, right? And so I've even talked with people about, and as being a shelter provider at times in my past, I'm like, I would rather run a shelter that's full of heroin addicts than meth addicts, right? Because there's just differences.
Yeah.
And somebody else mentioned that if you put in the village somebody that's using and somebody that isn't, the dynamic that brings about. So like, there's a whole bunch of unique needs and complex issues that are represented in our homeless population. And so it's going to take a ton of unique resources to meet that need. So safe rest villages, congregate shelters, like we have people that stay in our shelter that won't stay anywhere else. We have people that stay in our village that won't stay anywhere else, but there's people that are right across the street that won't stay in our shelter or in our village because it's just not the spot. So it's like there has to be options. And so that's one of the things that we realize with Agape is that we know that there are going to be certain people within our community that we just can't help. We aren't equipped to help. So that's part of what we need to do is create a network so that we can say when they come to us and we realize they're not going to be a good fit for Agape or they don't want to move into Agape, that we have a list of people that we can say, since they're sitting in our office and they're there, like you said, they made the first step, that we can then work with them to move them to the spot that maybe will best fit them. We had a gentleman that came to us a few weeks ago, I guess it was, that wanted to apply to stay in Agape Village, and we sat and we talked with him, and he had some pretty severe mental illness, and we have no mental health staff. So it's not fair to bring somebody into the village when we can't actually support them. And so we recognized that with him, but he also had a full-time job and could afford rent. So he didn't need a free place to stay. He needed to find somewhere that could take him. So with two phone calls, and 2 conversations, he went sprinting out of our office to get in his car to drive over to a clean and sober house where he had a room that night. So like, it's a team effort, right? It's not just us. So
But the hard
that's
part with
why-
cleaning sober is that they don't do it with them either.
Well, no,
That's
but
the difficulty, and I guess he left, but I was gonna answer his question. The difficulty with mental illness is getting these people to take their medications, staying on them, and figuring out what medication works best. Because when I first started, all I had was PTSD, and they wanted to give me this medication that had this many side effects, and controlled that many, and PTSD wasn't one of them.
no,
So-
but a clean and sober house was a better fit for his mental
Right.
illness than staying in a village that has no power.
Right.
You know.
I
so-
understand that, and if I may make a suggestion about the mental illness, Blackburn Center does one of the greatest jobs of dealing with people
Sure.
who have that, and with OHP, they actually can get coverage through them for
Yeah.
that, and they have 24-hour resources, so if that helps you any.
You know, you're giving me a broader perspective, and I like your responses and how you've responded, and I understand the complexity of so many unmet needs. And at the same time, I'm very torn because being part of a local community and seeing it go down the tubes and feeling that somehow Lents is once again being the object of being dumped on. I'll call it how I feel about it. And how about the safety of the residents, when safety is such an overriding issue right now across the city, but especially at Lents? How will you guarantee that for its citizenry that cares so deeply about its community? That's part of the equation here, and it's huge.
Well, and the difficulty is that Portland lost over 1,500 cops since January.
Okay, so I'm curious to hear what these gentlemen will have to say about it.
I can
Yeah, you can
tell
go
them,
ahead.
I can say from my perspective.
Hey, I'll let the pastor take it.
But, and that question was asked by the congregation. We didn't have that question asked by the community
Okay.
because we approached the people that live in houses on the back side of our property to come join us for conversations. They said, oh no, you're good. But because they can't even see the village
Right.
from where we're at, it's down a hill and up, it's just not in their purview. So we have that conversation with our church membership constantly. If we're going to reach into this community, how are you going to keep us safe? So, I mean, we have taken precautions just within our community to make sure that our church community feels safe when they come to the property, when they come. So we introduce them to the villagers. What I have found is once people start knowing somebody by name, it changes the dynamic and it changes the relationship. There are always people from outside of that world that come and invade our space, and we've had deaths, we've had shootings, we've had stabbings, we've had all kinds of broken windows, and
You described yesterday to me here.
we've had that.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
There was a shooting, Knapp Street, lived here 30 years. That was yesterday. So, and this is your job.
Well, how did you deal with those things?
So, I mean, coming from, and this is, it's going to be totally different than what Jake has to say, but from where we're coming from, we always talk about this, this person was having a bad day. We don't excuse the behavior, obviously, but we are talking from the Christian perspective. We're here and we're loving people, and it's going to get messy. And I've been upfront with my congregation about how messy it's going to be from day one. I didn't, paint any rainbows or anything, and so we're honest with that. I don't try to hide it when it happens, so everybody's aware of when it happens. I have people in our services on a regular basis that have been trained in de-escalation tactics. We have a good working relationship with the police department. The police department has my cell phone number and calls me all the time. So they've seen us. We know them. I've had the police come and hold events on our property, in our church. So just making sure, and I've been very clear with the congregation, I'm not going to be able to stop everything, but we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that we've taken precautions to keep people safe. And so from a community member's perspective and from the church pastor's perspective, when I go to the city and I talk to the city about it, that's what I'm not asking them to make it perfect, but I do go to the city and I say, can you at least be present? Can you at least show us that there's some support and that we're not totally out in the woods and by ourselves? And when I've approached the city with those kinds of things, I've been given decent responses.
I was worried that you were going to just throw me right under the
No. Because I know that there's a shortage in police officers, there's needs on every corner, and so it's a mess. And we do what we can to make sure that our church community knows that we've put our best foot forward. Yes, we're not going to be able to stop everything. Yes, that guy still got mad, threw the rock through the window, but my staff member took and put a note on the window, the plywood over the window that said, this person was having a bad night, let's remember to pray for him, and this is somebody that we've been called to love. And so for us, the mission's beyond just housing people. It's more about our faith and our relationship with Christ. So,
But you have an on-site security person that lives there.
yeah.
Do you want to?
Go ahead. Now
I'm sorry.
You okay?
Cool.
Sorry. So staff 24 hours a day, right? So we talked a little bit about that and bringing people into services. One of the things about ours is the Safe Rest Villages will only provide services to the people that are staying in the village, right? So there's not going to be people coming and going. There's not going to be people queuing in the neighborhood. There's no really reason for that because they have their own pod or sleeping unit. They have food. They have everything they should basic need met at the village, so they shouldn't be, So bringing people into services, when people are getting their basic needs met, you see a big shift in behavior and building relationships. I would say that is from the work personally, like when you have those people in the village and you have those staff that are making relationships with people, it's a totally different environment. And so I think that we have a really hard time because there's so many people sleeping on the streets, and it looks so much different when somebody is sleeping on a tent than when they're sleeping in a shelter. And I believe that wholeheartedly, 100%. So, and then we have good relationships with the police too. So, and they're needed, and our shelter providers are trained. I'm hoping these questions are for him because it's okay. His time.
You do such a good job. I don't know who put their hand up first.
I believe the woman was talking about just the safety of residents on the street. We don't have standing like you do. So all of the plans you're talking about, all of the processes aren't available to us. We're just people, and it happens to us. And your car is broken into, and these things are, and you make a call, and you're told that you're number 1010 for that afternoon.
That's this guy. You're gonna have to wait for
then.
He's up later.
But, that's, I realize that you guys are, doing incredible work for what you can do. I worked in supporting homeless services and things in the San Francisco Bay Area. But it's that concern of the individual resident, and there's like a disconnect. There's sort of the corporate thing that's happening, and nothing for the folks on the block.
Well, I think if there's relationships, and I don't know what the agreement will be with the service providers and stuff, but I know in our area, we have relationships with, some of our neighbors that are in that development on the other side of our hill. They have my phone number, and they have called me and said, I know you do a lot with the homeless, and there's a guy that's camping next to our fence, and he's been great, except now he's using the bathroom over here outside my bedroom window all the time, and you know him, and can you do something? And I said, send me a picture. And she sent me a picture, and I was like, yep, I know him. I'll definitely have a talk with him. So there has been that where I've been able to try to provide some assistance to the residents because of the relationships that I've built. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Safe Rest villages or other villages in the area, but if you
have your number.
Well, you can look it up here. There's cards. I don't know if I'll know your unhoused neighbors, but we can try.
So how do you feel the addition of the village in your area has affected the general area and community around you? Do you feel that has generally uplifted the area, brought it down, or been neutral?
I think our village has been neutral, honestly. We had the homeless population in the camps in the neighborhood before we built it. And I wouldn't say it's changed. I would say that we've seen more tents and more camps, but I wouldn't say that's the village's fault. I would say that's just
You've got nice looking pods. I want to live in one of them. They look great.
They're pretty nice. I mean, we took some time. I mean,
They're very cute.
Yeah.
They are, but all you get is a bed and a little.
You said they're 8 by 12, right?
8 by 12.
Yeah, that's bigger
That's
than
nice.
With a loft. Most of them have lofts. So you get a loft. You get a solar panel powered charging station.
Free Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi, not yet.
Oh.
You have to come down to the church for that. It's too far.
Well, there you go, free Wi-Fi.
So you got free Wi-Fi. We have a shared common building. Like I said, we just got utilities up to the site just this last couple weeks ago. So here in a month, whenever PGE decides to install the power, we'll have an actual bathroom trailer with showers, bathroom scene, hot water. It'll be paradise.
It's the little things.
Yeah.
So when I'm listening to both, I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing about one place that is a shelter and support for people who are actively looking to make a change in their life, and they're taking steps, and they've proven that they're kind of going to be safe for the community, and not just within the shelter, but also the community surrounding. And then I'm hearing about a separate place, which sounds completely different. And so I think that the pushback going this way and not so much this way is completely valid. So that's what I'm noticing is going on. So
I think it is two different.
Yeah, it's two different programs.
I know. It's two different programs. So I think, at least my perspective, I'm hearing from, what was your name again?
Matt.
I'm hearing from Matt a lot of things that make me feel comfortable with what's going on. And on the other side, I have a lot of worries. So is our time, like, what you're doing sounds awesome. I'm not saying what you're doing is not, but I think, there's a reason to spend some more time on that side, because
So what you're saying is
You're-
you want to stop asking Matt questions?
We want to stop asking that question because this sounds good and very reasonable, and I'd like to hear more about what you're doing, and specifically, you talked a lot about how to keep the safe space inside the shelter, but I'd like to hear how you're going to keep a safe space outside and stop what is going on in the camps from affecting and
So
are people going to be held to a standard of how they act in the community, or is it just based on how they hold in the camps?
Yeah, so I want to go back to the very beginning of that whole thing. Yes, his village is a higher barrier system than our village.
Can you define barrier, please?
So, barrier is how easy it is to access, right? So a safe rest village is low barrier in the aspect, and it's almost your time, sir. So I'm gonna run this out. Barrier would be things that people have to do in order to access the space, right? So random UAs, being clean and sober, those are barriers to entry. Having ID, having a social security card, those are barriers to entry, right? So it could be all sorts of different things. So safe rest villages are low barrier. That being said, you said something about somebody making a commitment when they go to his village.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody is making an effort when they come to our village, right? Like I said, they're showing up, right? And that's important. That's really important when somebody shows up, right? And that means they're at least trying. And I'm not saying it's going to work out every single time. So I just want to say that. There is that. They are showing up. And then the second thing is that if somebody, and I tried to say this earlier, and I'm sorry but if somebody is making it unsafe for the community at large, then that is a responsibility of the shelter operator. Like, if somebody's behavior is making it unsafe for people and the neighbors, then that's a responsibility that should be taken seriously and should be part of the conduct.
Quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is your shelter serving people in the general Portland area that are going to come to the shelter, or is it focused on people who are already in the Lents neighborhood?
So I get asked this a lot. I know that they're working on, so there's there's navigation teams that were funded during the fall. I'm sorry, I'm taking over your time. This happens a lot when I'm sure people just want to ask me questions. But there's navigation teams that go out and talk to houseless folks, right? And the city had 5 people doing this work, and that's been increased now to 45 positions, right? And they're hiring for these positions. Still, I don't know where they're at, I'm really honest. My assumption, they told me that they would hire all 45 by the end of the summer. I would assume they're about halfway filled those positions. 20 of those positions are going to be specifically focused around safe rest villages, right? To try to mitigate any unwanted camping around the area, but also to help bring those people into services. So there will be there will be more services around there to help get people to it. We also find that most people want to access services near them. That being said, the referral system is still getting a little bit cleaned up right now and figured out, so stay tuned for updates about it. But there's not going to be like you live here, so you have to go here kind of thing. I think that would be against the law because it would create some fair housing situation, discrimination. But there will be navigation teams around the safe rest villages to help support and move people that are in those neighborhoods into safe rest villages and into services. And maybe it's not safe rest villages that they want, maybe it's something else that they want, but there's going to be an increase in navigation teams. So I know that doesn't totally answer your question, but I hope that answers it a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't want to be argumentative with you.
No, it's fine.
But, this is, I assume, for our benefit, right, the meeting, so I don't want
Let that go.
Yeah.
I think it's his turn. Is it?
Yeah.
Where's the
Todd's.
Well, sounds like a good transition.
I'll
Yes.
hand out my business
It's a
cards
great
afterwards
transition.
and make sure that you all have them, okay?
Right. It's
Go
a
ahead.
challenge.
So I passed around my business cards, so if you want to contact me, feel free to. My name's Bob Cozzie. I'm the director for the Portland Bureau of Emergency Communications for the 911 Center, not just for the city of Portland, but for all of Multnomah County. So I speak to a lot of groups, a lot of organizations. I actually presented with Troutdale City Council, for example, because we serve Troutdale. As well as Wood Village, Maywood Park, all of these other entities that many of us in Portland kind of forget about. But we provide 911 and dispatch services. What does that mean? Our mission is answering 911 and dispatching. Lately, though, there's a key component in our mission statement. It says work collaboratively with our community and public safety partners to ensure effective and timely 911 call answering and dispatching. We haven't been able to accomplish the timely part of that lately. So let me give you a little bit of my background. I started in dispatch as a 911 call taker at a 911 center in Colorado Springs, Colorado. El Paso County Sheriff's Office. Started out just like a regular employee. You know, I was an academy of one. It was a medium-sized center, but they didn't have issues with staffing there. They had one vacancy and they hired me. Wow, what a dream that would be for a 911 center now. Well, I started out just like any call taker. I learned the ropes at call taking, learned how to dispatch police, learned how to dispatch fire, and then became a coach and a trainer and transitioned into training management. And eventually became the public information officer and training manager for a 911 authority board that operated training for 10 911 centers in Colorado. From there, I was recruited to come out here to Portland as the training manager for Portland 911. That was back in 2003. And I was only with the city of Portland for about 2.5 years. And had an opportunity to be director in Clackamas County. And I was there for 12.5 years. And about 4 years ago, came back. So that's a synopsis of my experience in this profession. And for the past 4 years, I've been the director for Portland 911. A lot has happened in these 4 years.
How's that working for you?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I wanted, if any of you are familiar with the story of Jonah. Yeah. You know, when you feel like you're having a call, you're supposed to go somewhere. And if you don't, you're going to get swallowed by a fish and puked up on the beach where you're supposed to be. I didn't want to go through that. But I knew that I needed to come back to the city of Portland. And I'm glad that I'm here, although it has not been easy by any means. This is one of the most challenging positions I've ever had, but it's also one of the most exciting and educational positions that I've ever had. Yeah.
What are your biggest challenges to...
Oh yeah, we're going to go over that. I gave you a handout.
Yeah.
Okay, so take a look at the bar graph on the back. This is, you're actually the first to see this report. This is a report that I put out on my director's update. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
My director's update every month. It's on our website, portland.gov/911. And there's a lot of data in that report. Now, this month's report is not posted yet, and it will be next week most likely. But what you see there in that graph is our 911 call volume, that first one on the left. 2019 was what I would consider a baseline year. It was normal. That was back when normal existed. And then everything happened. I remember speaking with this group, with the folks from Portland Street Response. It was over 2 years ago. Because Portland Street Response was just kind of an idea, a concept. We had somewhat of a picture of what it was going to look like. Now fast forward to today. When I spoke before you then, we were able to answer 911 calls for the most part within 20 seconds. We've had, since 2019, a 24% increase in our 911 calls. 24% just for the month of April, and that's what that graph shows you. It shows you April of 2019, 2020, which was our pandemic year. Calls actually went down a little bit initially because everyone was stuck at home. And then they spiked. And you can see that big spike. And now this year, I wouldn't say that's a reduction in 911 calls. What I would say is maybe we're beginning to see things leveling off. I track this similar report every week. And it's the Sunday through Saturday, Sunday through Saturday of the previous week. I get the report on Monday. And on any given week, it shows a comparison of that 7-day period to the same 7-day period last year, the year before, and the baseline year 2019. And consistently, we're seeing 20% increase, 45% increase in some cases. Now that's unusual. That would be the wildfires. Do you remember that? That was a huge spike in our 911 calls. Well, you can imagine, we were talking earlier about the difficulty of being able to get and keep employees. It's happening everywhere. We see it, heck, I see it at fast food restaurants.
So how understaffed are you?
Good question, and I have the answer to that too. So on the other side of that sheet is it's a snapshot of our strategic plan. This year, because we had, when I started at the OEC, BOEC is what we like to call it, Bureau of Emergency Communications. We didn't have a strategic plan, and we started one. I like to do strategic planning, so we did it in-house, we did it internally ourselves. And we had 10 different initiatives, lots of different goals that we had planned. And then COVID hit, protests, riots, defunding the police, all of the issues and concerns that happened because of that, increase in our 911 calls, reduction in staff. So this year we recognize we need to rethink our strategic plan. Look at it again, kind of do a forklift change and start over. And what you see in front of you is, and you're also the first group that actually gets their eyes on this, because we just put it in a little pretty format last week. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, so what I want to focus on here are the first 2 initiatives. We pared it down from 10 initiatives in the old plan, streamlined it to 5 major initiatives. And that first initiative is an adequately staffed 911 workforce. And the second one is effective and timely 911 call answering meeting national standards in all circumstances. So you can see on there, there's more goals that are under these objectives than what I put on this piece of paper. But what I wanted to do was really give our community the flavor of what we're after. So I picked the top 3 that I thought were the most urgent to our community and to any stakeholders that would be reviewing this document. So if you can take a look at adequately staffed 911 workforce, the second bullet point has to do with our recruitment. The third has to do with retention. So what is our staffing right now? We have funding for 128 full-time employees and 3 limited term employees. What does that mean? It basically means that we don't have permanent funding for 3 of those. But that helps us overhire so we can have extra trainees. But we have 22 vacancies right now. 22 vacancies and an increase of 20 plus, 25 plus, 30 plus % increase in 911 calls. Now let's put this in perspective because it takes our trainees about 1.5 to 2 years to get fully trained. They start out as trainees in the academy. They go down to Salem to the DPSST for 3 weeks for the state academy. They come back and start on-the-job training. They sit with a coach, plugged in with them, sitting right next to them. And you can probably, if you call 911 and you get a brand new trainee, you can probably hear the coach talking in the background. And the trainee's kind of parroting what that coach is telling them to say. That process is about the first 6 months to get them certified in call taking, to where they're ready to answer 911 calls by themselves.
Now you're just scaring us.
Yeah.
What about the software issues we just read about?
Yeah. Can I finish
Yes,
this,
please.
and we'll talk about the
Yes.
Pro QA. That's what that is. So then they go into police dispatch training. Police dispatch training takes another 6 months, 9 months, kind of depends, because now we have a certified call taker who's working half the time as a call taker, and the other half as a trainee. They're learning how to dispatch police. Then, when they're certified in police dispatch, they go into fire dispatch. Same thing, all over again. They're working as a call taker, police dispatcher, and then part of the time as a fire dispatch trainer. So you can see this is a very long process, and it takes quite a while. So we have right now about 46 trainees in our pipeline. In fact, I wrote the number down. We have 14 who are call-taking only trainees right now. They're learning call-taking. And we have 6 who are in the academy. All the other of that 40 are in police dispatch training or fire dispatch training. So they're actually answering phones part of the time. We have academies planned in August and November. So the hope is by the end of the calendar year to maybe have all of our current positions filled. But we only have 6 in this academy. Our goal is 12. So it's a little more challenging for us to bring people on board as well. So let's talk a little bit about Pro QA. You've heard that term. What's that?
Pro QA.
Pro QA. If you saw the OPB article the other day, there was a report that there's a software program that we implemented that's slowing down our call processing. Now the software system that we implemented is in use by, I think, 3,000 plus 3,800 911 centers or emergency dispatch centers worldwide. It's not something that's new. In fact, when I was a trainee at my first 911 center, they implemented Pro QA. So it's been around a really long time. And there is, in that report, it talks about dispatchers, some of our dispatchers being really frustrated with the software system because it requires them to ask a lot more questions. What the intent of the software system is, really, is to ask the right questions so that the right response is sent. So, for example, with the old system, we weren't able to do any quality checks with it because it was more of a fly by the seat of your pants card set. The dispatchers could kind of skim through, pick and choose, and there was no quality checks on what they were asking. Multnomah County Emergency Medical Services told us to change from that system. And that's why we're implementing Pro QA. Now, if I had it to do over again, I love these hindsight 2020 type of scenarios. If I had it to do over again, yeah, I'd still move forward with Pro QA. But what we intended to do was implement it a year earlier. And that would have been before the pandemic. That would have been before the 30% increase in 911 calls. We weren't able to implement it then. And the reason we weren't able to is because, and this is where labor relations and all of these types of things play into it. The union that represented our dispatchers started bargaining And then the dispatchers voted to change unions. We were halfway done. We had Pro-QA implementation on the schedule. And they changed unions and we had to start over. So that put us back to square one, delayed the implementation of Pro-QA by a year, which honestly, we thought, okay, we'll delay it a year. It's not that big a deal. But we didn't realize there was a pandemic. I wish I had a crystal ball. I mentioned earlier how long it takes our trainees. It takes them 1.5 to 2 years to get fully certified. With the increase in 911 calls we've experienced, I would have had to see that increase coming 2 years earlier and would have had to hire 30 more employees. Have them certified in time to be able to absorb that workload. So all that to say, I don't want to throw excuses out there because I acknowledge the service we're providing when you're able to get through, which is about 1/3 of the time within 20 seconds, 37% actually, within 20 seconds. You get really, really good and quick service. About 87% of the time, we're able to answer within a minute. Yeah.
Once you get up to speed, hopefully by the end of the year, sort of to equate it to you're taking orders for pizzas, is there going to be enough people to deliver those pizzas?
Police officers, good question. Really, really good question. Thank you. I don't know. And that's part of the problem here because we have the system. When you call 911, imagine all of the shootings that we're handling now. Okay? Anytime we get a shooting call, it's not just one 911 call.
Well, 30 or 40 of them.
Exactly. We used to say when I was a dispatcher, the phones light up like a Christmas tree. And when you get that type of surge, and then your neighbor is having chest pain.
He just goes back.
Yeah, it gets put in the queue, and it takes a minute, 2 minutes, sometimes longer, for us to be able to answer that 911 call. Not to mention the frustration people feel with non-emergency call answering.
Well, let's not go there.
So let's do go
I can
there.
make a batch of cookies, and it takes 1 hour and 45 minutes to make 6 dozen chocolate chip cookies while I am on hold.
I know.
Portland Police Department is eating those cookies as we speak.
You know what, I feel your pain, and here's what we're doing about it. And that's why I wanted to hand out the strategic plan. Because in that second box, that gold box, effective and timely 911 call answering, remember I mentioned our mission before. Our mission is to answer 911 and dispatch help. Interestingly, our mission is not non-emergency. We're the Bureau of Emergency Communications, not the Bureau of Non-Emergency Communications. I want us to get back to doing what we're good at. And that's answering 911 and dispatching help. So there's a number of things that we are implementing. And you, again, this is a first. You get to be the first to hear this. But there is a technology solution that is going into place, should be tomorrow, actually. That is, it's called the Automated Abandoned Callback. About 20% of our 911 calls are hang-ups. And every single hang-up, we have to call back. So imagine this, we're taking a call taker out of answering 911 calls, and they have to go into a queue and begin calling all of these callers back to confirm if they have an emergency. And that takes a long time. That changes a 911 call from maybe a 30-second answer to 2.5 minutes right there to confirm if they have an emergency. And it keeps a call taker from being able to answer 911. So if you're ever in that position where you're on hold with 911, non-emergency is not on time, I'm not 911. If you're on hold, just stay on hold. and we'll answer it as it comes through the queue. But the automatic callback feature, what it does is when you hang up, the system automatically calls you back and asks you to confirm if you have an emergency. It says, you called 911, do you have an emergency? And if you answer yes, I think you have to push 1 on your phone. It brings you back into our 911 queue. If you answer no, that counts as our callback. So we're not having to have a dedicated call taker calling those back. If you don't respond, and in some cases people aren't safe to respond, that brings them back into the queue as well. So that way we're able to offload hundreds on any given day of those non-emergent, or of those 911 hang-up calls. Yeah.
Yeah, so I call emergency because of emergencies. Okay? And I'm told it's a non-emergency and they hang up on me, or I get questioned by them. Okay? And one incident was, I'm crossing the street. I got the right of way. Guy pulls a 45 out at me. Okay? I'm calling 911 to report. She tells me it's a non-emergency because he didn't shoot his gun.
Wow, yeah, that's not correct.
And then I had a guy by the coffee shop.
Refuge?
Before the coffee shop, that Oliver's Cafe. So I'm walking on the sidewalk. Dude pulls up on a motorcycle. I know it's stolen because the idiot left his freaking keys in it with the motor running. Goes into Refuge to eat for 45 minutes. Bald tires, no license plate. Almost crashed his bike twice. So I called 2 hours later, no response. And I almost get run over by this guy. So I call back, they tell me it's a non-emergency. A friend of mine and for those of you who don't know, 2.5 years ago I was living in a mall 205. There's a guy who got into my house and died by death by suicide by a cop in my arms. Okay? And Chaplain did a great job. You know, all the cops there did a great job. Postal's doing great. But it's my frustration is that when I call 911 and I get an attitude from them, and then I call non-emergency, and I'm on hold for 3 freaking hours.
Yeah, so let's put that in perspective. 911 and non-emergency right now, it's the same call takers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why you're on hold so long, because our priority, we have 3 tiers of priority in terms of calls. 911 is the first priority. So when you call 911, those are answered first. As those all get dealt with, then we begin picking up non-emergency calls, which is why they're on hold so long. And this is why the 311 program is so important.
Well, I mean, I understand that you guys are so inundated because of the crowding and everything that's going on, and people just don't want to work. The hard part for people like me in our position, okay, with a record or with this or with that, you know, our past is supposed to be our past. And some of us are victims of circumstance. But with the background check and everything else that we need to go through, and some of us are more than qualified, it discounts us because of something stupid that happened that wasn't even our fault. And we want to go to work, you know, but the system is so difficult. So my question is, how do people like myself who have this past can be forgiven of that and do jobs like this instead of going into construction or whatnot that some of us like myself can't do anymore?
You know, that's a good question. I do know one program, I don't know of others, but I live in Gresham, okay? And Gresham actually has a program that they have just started where they are hiring, it doesn't apply in your case now, but they're hiring houseless people for city jobs.
Yeah, King Slade is one of them, downtown Portland, but I can't do that kind of work either. And, you know, I'm not saying I'm a bad person, it's something that happened, you know, that's discounting me from doing good work, and they all want me to go lift 50, 100 pounds. I'm like, dude, I've got rotator cuff tears and carpal tunnel both hands, you know, and all they see is a person who messed up without a brain, and, excuse me, I have a brain, you know.
Did you have a comment?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I was curious.
You're not supposed to ask questions.
I know, it's so weird. It's so weird. And if you'll be like, damn it, Jake. But how many people call emergency to move past the non-emergency side? Because I've heard people, I've seen people say like, oh, you just call emergency and get a hold of somebody.
Yep.
That has to slow things down too, right?
And that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the reason 911 calls have increased. And I hear it all the time. I'm listening outside my office is right on the ops floor, and call taking section is right there. And I hear multiple times a day, I'm sorry that you were waiting so long on non-emergency. But this is not a 911 emergency. You're going to have to call back on non-emergency. But that brings me back to the...
I never got an apology.
That brings me back... honestly,
They hang up on me.
the call takers that, I mean, we train them to be very courteous, and if they're not, we investigate that.
What can you do to the citizens, though, to help us? Because not only with 911 and non-emergency, I've been a part of this community helping the neighbors, and they always say, well, who do I call? They've never heard of one point of contact, never once in their entire lives. And I'm handing out flyers and 211, but there's way too many, not 211s,
There's too many,
311s and 911s to call
And that's
the
why
city.
I want to see my vision, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is God's vision, okay? I hope it turns out this way, because I've seen it work this way in other cities, large cities that have 311 programs, where there should be two numbers that our community members have to remember. 911 for emergencies, 311 for everything else. It's that simple. 311 is getting funding. They're getting more funding. The budget passed, and we're going to have some expanded hours for the 311 program. Right now, it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Never heard of it.
If you call 311 Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you will get non-emergency information. Lots of referral information. They'll give you all kinds of information.
It's one point of contact with 3 numbers instead of 8.
Exactly.
So pretty much,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really anything. It's
Instead of
also
4,000,
questions about bills.
4,000
It's-
will give you anything that you can get at 311. You tell them what you want, and they'll either take the report or they'll forward it, give you the department. Because you can ask them, what department controls the speed of the traffic lights? And they give you to that poor man named Jack,
There you go, and
who's
that's what 311
responsible
will do.
for setting up the speed on traffic light changes.
Some of the funding for 311 expands their hours to 7 days a week. I think it's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then eventually the vision is for it to be a 24/7 operation. I'm not quite sure what the timing for that's going to be.
What's the delay on that? Because until that's up and running, you guys are still going to get the non.
That's the problem. We're caught between a rock and a hard place. Because our call takers are, remember I mentioned our mission. Doesn't say non-emergency on here, does it? Yet, that's landed in our laps. And it's not just us. This is something common everywhere. The first 911 center I worked for had a focus of non-emergency. Why? Why did we do that? Well, because the simple answer is we have this new program we want to operate. Give it to dispatch. They can handle it. Why? Because they have the infrastructure and they have the people 24/7. And nationwide that's happened. It's not just here.
So this might be off base, but doesn't, I mean, and I'm sorry for bringing this up, but doesn't that also increase our taxes and everything else too? I mean, I know it's necessary, but it just seems like that every time something was implemented or something else happens, everything goes through the roof, and I'm already having a difficulty of time surviving as it is, as are a lot of other people. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know how the tax system works.
Or
I
we
know that
borrow money from China.
there's limited funds, and we have to submit a budget request and try to get funding. But you know what? I mean, it's already 8:30. I know that I've already gone over. You have my contact information. If you have questions, feel free to call me. Yeah.
Is there a 211 system too?
There is.
Yeah, and 211, you have to leave a message and they'll call you back if you're, unless you're lucky enough to get them first thing in the morning.
But 211 is also for services, isn't it?
It is for services, yes. 911 for emergencies, and in Bob's world, 311 for everything else. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Bob. We are adjourned.
Jake, do you have a card?
I do.
Oh, I thought you were